Okay, I believe we're on. So, hello everyone. Just like to introduce myself really quick. My name's Sue Panciocco. I'm in Colorado, United States, and I've been asked to talk a little bit about my journey as a parent regarding autism. So I'm going to share my screen uh, and start my presentation here. Okay. Hopefully that is going out. Um, okay, so I was asked to talk about creating peace and reconnection. So just to tell a little bit more about my background, as I said, I'm from Colorado. I am an ADHD parenting coach. I've written a couple of books. Uh, I'm a mother of two kids, two teens that have ADHD and autism. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey and some of the ways that I turned things around in my home. So when I had my first child, um, when you're a mom and your kid, you have your kid, you kind of begin to see like things aren't exactly going the way that you had envisioned, and um, some of the things aren't happening the way you thought they would happen. Now, in the beginning, I just thought my kid was like me, just a wild kid that had a lot of energy and that kind of thing. So it really wasn't until, they started getting into school that I noticed that they were having some problems. But it took a long time till about their eighth birthday or so to figure out what was going on because so many things can mimic the symptoms I was seeing. And so it was a long process before we could find out that they uh, had ADHD. And we didn't think there was any autism involved because we weren't seeing really a lot of the common characteristics. My kids, and I think that's probably because their ADHD was very, very strong. And also, there was, I guess, less known about it. I don't know how to say that, but like people didn't look at it in the way they do now with the different levels and things. So when I had my second kid, I was already pro, so uh, I started noticing the same things. So we did end up getting a diagnosis at 5, but he was more, I guess, had the speech delay. So we tried early intervention because he was having speech problems. He was very rigid. He liked his routines. He, didn't want to go to preschool because the kids didn't line up straight. And so I was kind of like, oh, maybe this is, we saw some characteristics. So, but he was diagnosed with just ADHD. So we kind of took that. And that's part of the reason why I became a coach, because for the first 11 years, my house was in complete chaos and I was not having fun parenting. Things were just out of control. And so I started doing more research on ADHD so I could figure out how to parent better. Um, and then later on, when my kids started getting, we had medication, ADHD was kind of out of control. They seemed to be doing under control. They seemed to be doing fairly well. Uh, my oldest came to me and said, I think I might have autism too. And I was like, really? I don't know. But again, I didn't have as much of a grasp on that as I did with the ADHD. So they said, "Hey, can I get retested?" And I was like, "Let's go for it." It's been, over 10 years, you might as well do it. You're going to go into college. We should probably have a fresh report. And so that's when we found out that at 17 that they had autism. So it was kind of late in the game, not in the beginning. And talking to the person that evaluated them said, looking at your old report, I'm pretty sure that the first evaluation, the person, she kind of tiptoed around it. It's in the report if you read it as a clinician, and but they didn't come right out and say it. So obviously it was there, but the ADHD seemed to be the biggest issue at the time. And then my youngest, we got him retested and we found out. So now it's like, let's retest him anyways for a new report and see if this is true with him. And it was. So now I had two kids with ADHD and autism. Now, I didn't really change a whole lot. I'm just doing a little snippet in case people don't have, understanding about ADHD or not. But basically, it's a neurological disorder in the brain, and most people realize, I think nowadays, that people think about the hyperactivity, the impulsivity, the inattention. Those are kind of the main things that are looked at, and they view autism more as a developmental disorder that affects like behavior, communication, social behavior. But they both have some overlapping, which is why it was difficult at the beginning with the tension and the executive functioning skills and the sensory processing. And that some of the behaviors are there, but the reasoning behind the behaviors are different, the reason they're doing those. So with ADHD, it's all those things, the attention, the distraction, hyperactivity. And as I said, when they have difficulty making friends, but it's usually because they're just so over the top that people can't stand the energy. Um, and medication helped with that. So when they were more even and the impulsivity and the hyperactivity was kind of level, we started noticing more of the differences of get you ADHD people can get hyper focused, but it was a different kind of hyper focus and not being able to do transitions, not picking up on social cues, um, the way we communicated, they were very literal. We had to make sure that we were explaining things detailed enough because they often got confused. When I used a lot of vague wording, they had trouble. Uh, the repetitive behaviors, uh, and again, when they were on the ADHD medication, we saw that they were more, their behavior was more consistent, and I couldn't tell if it was because they were medicated or if it was, the autism part. So getting into the whole what was happening. Um, so it was very hard in the beginning because uh it's very demanding. They have different behaviors, some overlap, and some of the strategies are different than to for each type. So really just trying, like after they were diagnosed with autism, my oldest was like, "Are you going to treat me any different? Are you going to do anything different?" And I said, "No, I just have a better understanding. So maybe I'm going to change kind of my phrasing and whatnot. But I think overall, now that I've figured out that I needed to approach parenting differently than the normal traditional, like do as I say kind of thing or punishing and whatever, uh, that started to help. So both of them had, so my oldest had very, very drastic emotional changes, um, but was more kind of social and could kind of be in a situation where they could follow a conversation and be a part of it. Whereas my youngest has a real hard time. Is more of a loner because, as he says, people bore him because he doesn't do small talk. He doesn't like that. Um, he would shut down more and not just disappear, not talk to people, to kind of recharge his batteries. So understanding that, was very important. And the other big thing was my husband and I were not on the same page at all, uh, with either the diagnosis, whether to medicate or not, how to panic, so how to parent, sorry. And so it was causing a lot of friction between us. And, you know, you kind of felt the whole tension. Everybody was kind of on edge. We were all kind of, uh, waiting for the next shoe to drop kind of thing. And so so the atmosphere of the house was not peaceful at all. It was very tense. And in the beginning, my oldest needed more attention, more work. And my youngest kind of was off to the side. And um, when I started paying attention to my son, when I found out about his stuff, trying to help him through, um, there was a constant, you're paying more attention to this kid than that kid. And there was a little bit of sibling rivalry, uh, because they didn't like when the focus was taken off of one of the other. So, and the roles definitely switched. So when my oldest started to get more independent and, doing things, going to college, driving, uh, I started working with my son, trying to help him, get him through the school day, those kind of things. So as much as I tried to be equal for both kids, it was difficult, and depending on where they are, uh, at stages of life, meant I had to change kind of how I approached things. So that was so I would say the first 11 years of our house was not a happy place. Um, and so what changed was learning more about ADHD, and then after the autism diagnosis, learning more about that, figuring out how those two interact together and what parts were different. So some of the things that was extremely helpful for us was having more predictability, having more of a routine. Now, I have ADHD myself, and we need routines, but we hate routines. And so it was really hard for me to keep a good routine for my kids, but they needed it. So, and then to understand why transitions were so hard, to if things switched, I was okay with that. But and my oldest wasn't too bad. But my son could not handle any kind of a surprise or situation where we had to change quickly. So the things that helped us, we have a giant calendar. It used to be like a whiteboard kind of thing. Now it's a TV, and we use a program where I can link my Google Calendar, and my kids can see exactly what's happening for the day. It's every kid has a color so they can know, is this related to me, or is it related to the other one, or is it related to mom or dad? That really helped because they could go to the calendar and see what was happening. And, they would still ask questions over and over, like, what's happening? What's going to happen here? What's going to happen here? I have this. What's going to happen here? But having that was really helpful because I could have a visual way of showing them this is what's happening during the day. And then if there was any anxiety about what was happening, then we could discuss this is what's happening. This is what could happen in this situation. So let's kind of prepare. for all of the things in case there is something that happens that we weren't really expecting it. And then visual timers were great. They worked so well with my son because of the heart being, getting so hyper focused on something and then having to make a transition would cause a complete meltdown. So having that visual timer, being able to say, you can, you can go do this, but today at this time we have this. So I will come back and we can set a timer so that you know where you're at. So like if they're playing a video game, I could go and set the visual timer and say that when this goes off, we're going to have to leave. And that gave him more time to switch, also to, save the game, do whatever he needed to do without feeling like he was blindsided. So that was extremely helpful for our family doing that. The other thing was sensory considerations, learning about their sensitivities and their preferences. Um, at first we thought sensory processing disorder. I mean, everything just kind of blends, but knowing the things that my kids are sensitive to helped a lot because then I could plan ahead. I could have warnings like we're going to go into this situation and um it may be loud or whatever. So let's make sure we have your noise canceling headphones. And then having an escape plan. Like if you feel like you are getting overwhelmed, here's what we can do. And if it means leaving, we'll leave. But let's talk about the various things we can do in this situation if it arises when we go to this thing. So that was very helpful. It helped tremendously because in the beginning, we just stopped taking our kids like to out to eat and to places, parades, places with big crowds, uh, those kind of things, because now we understood better. I can remember taking my son to Walt Disney World, and um, actually it was Universal because they were all into the Harry Potter, and he just froze and didn't want to do anything. And we were just like, we didn't at that time didn't understand what was going on. Like, hey, you guys were all excited about going here and let's go have this adventure. And my oldest seemed to be like, hey, this is great. But my son was just completely overwhelmed. And at the time we didn't understand that. Um, so he's just like, I want to get a wand and I want to leave. That's it. And we were like, we have this whole park to see. So if I knew then what I know now, then I probably could have planned better. We probably could have done more or seen more things. It probably would have been a little more enjoyable. But uh, so those were the kind of things that I started to learn and understand and making these accommodations for my kids. The same with the house of having places for them to go when they needed to be away. Like when my kids don't like watching movies with my husband because he has the surround sound and they're so loud and it's so overwhelming for them. So when we have a family movie night, we will use a different TV that we can put the volume that's not the surround sound, so we can all enjoy it at the level that everybody's comfortable with. So those were great things to help start to lessen the tension in the house, lessen the meltdowns that we were having, uh, and also helped with my husband and I coming together because when he started seeing the changes, I started making all these changes, like this is how I'm going to handle the kids, and he started to see that there was positive things that were happening. We kind of started to get on the same page, and he started to understand, and I started to teach him the things that I was doing with the kids. And so that again, that really brought everything together as well. Uh, so the other thing, as I talked about, the meltdowns, the challenging behavior, identifying what triggers my kids so that I can prevent a meltdown. It's not always 100%. So, having techniques that I can de-escalate the behavior, the situation was really helpful. Uh, my tone was very important. My oldest always thought that we were yelling. Now, my husband always sounds like he's yelling. He's this big Italian guy. So he's loud, he's boisterous when he talks. So it was really hard to be able to work on our tone so that our kids didn't feel like we were yelling, that we were being aggressive. And it took a while. Uh, I grew up in a very sarcastic house. I used a lot of sarcasm, which my kids did not get, and so they thought that I was being, mean, or my tone was angry. So I had to really change how I spoke, the way I said things, the things that I actually did say. I had to remove a lot of the sarcasm, because they didn't get it. I had to provide more detailed instructions because my kids took things very literally. So if I said, "Can you go clean up your mess on the table?" they were like, "I don't understand." So I would have to be more like, "I'd like you to bring your plate and your silverware up to the sink." Um, and that's what I kind of have, the rule of three. I don't try not to give them too many instructions, more than three instructions in a row. That's also because of the ADHD, but being very literal. Uh, Bring your plate up and your silverware. And then when they finish that, okay, can you now take this rag and wipe down that area? Uh, Showing them what I wanted. That made a big difference because my kids didn't understand the vagueness, or some of the, I guess, some of the slang that I would use, like, can you go in the living room and straighten things up? And my kids are like, "What does that mean?" And so I had to say, do you know what that means? No. Okay, well, what I would like you to do is X, Y, and Z, instead of just using that vague term. So it was more a lot of my husband and I having to change just the way we approach things, the way we spoke, the just those little nuances that we didn't realize, uh, that made a big difference. Um, I think I'm remembering this whole apple pie situation, and my husband hates when I bring this up, but my oldest was trying to have a piece of apple pie, and they said, "Can someone help me cut this pie?" And my husband's like, "I cannot believe you don't know how to cut a pie." Like, and it ended up in this huge fight. And it was the fact that what my kid was trying to say was, "Can you help me cut this? Because when I do it, it falls apart and I don't know what to do when the pie falls all apart and it makes a mess. Like, I can't cut it nicely." So when we figured out that that was what they were intending and wanted to do, it totally made sense, right? It's just because the communication that we had wasn't really, each party was not understanding the communication. So yeah, they know how to cut a piece of pie. They were trying to figure out, how am I going to do this without making the pie a mess and getting stuff everywhere. Uh, so yeah, so communication, understanding the way your kids communicate, the verbal ways and the non-verbal ways. Uh, I've had to get very good at reading my kids' nonverbal cues, especially if they get extremely overwhelmed, because they often will go nonverbal and not be able to talk. And so we've had to figure out ways that when they get so overwhelmed or so stressed, how are we going to communicate so that I can help them get through whatever they need or give them what they need. And so, we're in the age of text, so that's great because our kids they'll just type a note on their phone if they need to, or I will ask yes or no questions so that they can respond that way. But when it first started happening, I was so frustrated and so angry, like, just talk. Just, I can't help you if you don't talk. And I didn't understand that they couldn't talk, that they were having a problem communicating. And so once, getting the um, information and learning more about that I was able to, like I said, adapt how I spoke to my kids, how I approached them, and able to help them when they had a situation where they were not able to verbally tell me what they needed. So that was a big help. We It cut out a lot of frustration in our house, and changed our thinking to, uh, a lot of times with both ADHD and autism, more ADHD, you kind of like wondering if they're doing this on purpose and are you behaving this way to get attention or whatever. It's a common myth with that. And so breaking out of those misunderstandings, those stereotypes, those kind of things was hard and took a while. But by being open-minded and really just, I need to do what's best for my kids' needs. How am I going to do this? That helped us transform our home so that it was no longer this tense, chaotic place that everybody on edge and angry all the time. Uh, so how do we build the communication, building the trust back? So when you start to have a lot of that tension and people aren't communicating, it starts to build resentment and starts to, uh, that's where the anger comes from. Everybody's thinking everybody else should do something differently and not looking at what they can do differently. So one of the big things that I started doing was spending more time with each kid individually, doing something that they wanted to do. When my kids were younger, it was Minecraft. So I would take time to play Minecraft with each one individually. Um, Finding out activities that we all share, like we all like to go to thrifting stores and antique stores and things like that. And so we bond over those kind of things, having fun with that kind of stuff. So that was a big thing because I know for moms, you feel like you're with your kids 24/7. Like, hey, I am spending time with them. So it took me a while to figure out, that's not the time we're talking about. That's the, you know, daily things. You need to have this special uh, time where it's not rushed. It's not about getting them out of the house in the morning and making sure that dinner's ready and everybody's, not uh, arguing and things. So that took me a while to figure out because most days in the early days, I just wanted to be alone. I just wanted to, just regroup because I was going, and it was such not even fit, not just physical, but emotionally taxing to uh, have to do this every single day. So started doing that was great. One of the things my kids really love that we started, and we don't do it as much because they're teens and they're all over the place now, but we used to have a thing called the magic rock, and we had found this rock somewhere, and at night we would all get together and tell the magic rock one good thing that happened during the day. And then say thank you. So that was a great way for all of us to kind of take a step back and realize that even if the day seems like it went completely sideways and everybody was having a bad day, it really made us look for that silver lining. There's one, you should be able to pull at least one thing out of the day that you enjoyed. For the longest time, my husband just said going to bed. But after a while, he started to add more things in. So and I think it's helpful to teach, gratitude and looking at the world in a more positive way. I know that it really helped me change the way I view not only my kids, but the world and how I interact with other people. I think my empathy and compassion grew. Uh, my patience grew. I was not a very patient person, so that was very helpful as well. Uh, Encouraging self-expression. This part I didn't really have too much of a problem with because I didn't care if my kids wanted to dye their hair or wear mismatched clothes or, uh, you know, one time when my kid was 3, they decided they wanted to be a leopard and they painted their entire body brown. And like that stuff didn't really bother me. But um, as they got older, I really started to understand that having that freedom to explore and not judge, not be judged by the choices you're making is really a big part of your kid growing up and feeling comfortable with who they are, uh, being able to express themselves. So I think that was a very important part of it. We were doing it, but understanding that we need to let our kids be who they are and not judge it, um, was a very important thing because now I'm seeing my kids find their own way. They're finding their who they are, watching the different stages as they start to learn more about themselves and the world. It has been extremely exciting and rewarding to see. So as I mentioned, every relationship needs some kind of trust and mutual respect because everybody wants to be seen and heard and valued. And when my kids were younger, I didn't really, it was parent child. You should do X, Y, and Z and not fight me on it. And I didn't realize that uh, I wasn't here to just mold this kid into something that I thought they should be. It should be that this is their own, you know, unique little person that should be seen and heard and valued just as much as an adult. Like, just because I'm older doesn't mean that my kid doesn't have their own thoughts and feelings and dreams. So that was a big one to get out of that hierarchy kind of thing. Not to say that we're on the same exact level, but when I started to treat my kids with more respect and give them a say in things that were happening to them, it really helped the relationship and the bonding. Because trust really is you build on, as I said, doing those frequent interactions, spending that one-on-one time with the kids, making sure that they're positive, not picking an activity and saying, we're going to go do it, letting them do it and being low risk, not being judgmental, not when my kid has feelings about something that I think is minor, not belittling them for that or eh, whatever choice they decide to, they like this and I think, not having an opinion on that, just that's their thing. Also not saying, hey, let's go play Minecraft, and while we're playing Minecraft, I am going to lecture you on why you should keep your room cleaned, or, what are you going to do with your rest of your life kind of thing. The interaction should be more casual and fun, and uh, keeping it light and non-judgmental. So this is the big thing, because I talk to so many parents, and nobody really, you're always told you should take care of yourself, you should rest, you should. And I know for a long time I said, how? How am I supposed to do that? I have to be on the go. I have to be here. I have to be doing this. And you get burned out. Uh, there is an emotional and physical toll when you're taking care of somebody that has more needs. Uh, and we do need breaks. And I understand that it is sometimes really hard for people. I was lucky enough to have a family that was supportive and would give me breaks, and as well as friends. But I know that there are other people that aren't that fortunate. And so finding time for yourself might be a little bit harder. But even if it's, you know, 5 minutes in the shower, uh, or sitting in your car after you come home from work to decompress, things like that. Just finding little ways that you can kind of take back uh, some of your energy and recharge your battery, because it's like they say, uh, with the whole oxygen mask, like when the oxygen mask drops from the plane, put yours on first, because you're no good to your child if you are not able to help them. So you put yours on first, and then then you help your child. So again, like I said, building a support network, connecting with other parents, support groups, professionals. We're in an amazing world right now where we can connect with so many other people. Like, I'm in the United States, and there are people on this that are all over the world, which I find amazing and fascinating. And I absolutely love the people that I meet from all over. Just finding people, because the first part of my journey felt very lonely and felt like nobody understood. And it took a while to find people, even my family, not completely understanding, because they're not living it. And so that was important, to find other people that were living the same way, that understood that. And you were able to vent and not be judged, and be able to talk about things and not feel so alone. I think that's one of the toughest things, and one of the things that I talk to parents a lot about is just that that feeling that nobody understands, that you're all alone. Even if you're in a room full of people, you feel alone. And not to say that, every support group you go to is great, and the other people you meet, but having the access to the internet, I have made some great connections with people, and I haven't even met them. But I can talk to them, and like a friend, and know that I'm not being judged. So I think there's more opportunity now. When my kids were young, like, Facebook hadn't even started, and there weren't a lot of support groups. Really, it was just, you go to therapy and your kid goes to therapy. That was kind of like, that's how you got support. So we're living in a better age, in the sense that there's more information. Uh, we Research is finding out more and more stuff all the time, and we're able to reach more people than just our little bubble that it used to be like. Um, so that's all I have for today. I didn't get to quite an hour, but I can take questions if people want those. I can explain anything more if I wasn't very clear on that. Um, So I'm just going to escape this. And if people do have questions, then I am happy. I'm trying to find the whole chat box and everything. I don't know where that went. Um, but yeah, I have no idea where my Zoom went. Oh, here it is. So yeah, probably not the most exciting thing, but as I said, most of the beginning of my journey was in turmoil and not having, not knowing that there was the autism with my kids and finding out from my oldest that, hey, I don't feel like I um that everything's right. I'm trying to remember how they exactly said it, but they're just saying there's still some things that I don't feel are answered with just the diagnosis I have. And I really would like to explore it more. If they had not come to me, I probably would have just kept, just dealing with the ADHD and not really uh, getting as deep as we are now and learning more about their experiences and the way they see the world. And I think that probably would have been a disservice to them. So I'm kind of glad that my oldest had the insight to say, "Hey, I think we need to explore this a little bit more." Um, but I did ask my oldest, like, "Hey, I'm going to go do um, this presentation, and I'm really well versed on ADHD, and I've only, you know, last 4 or 5 years, I guess, have been really researching autism and how it presents, how it affects people, how it overlaps with uh, other things." And I said, what do you think I should talk about? Like, as my kid, how do you think, what are the things that helped that I did differently that helped you uh, the most? And they said, your tone, really working on your tone and how you say things, understanding our sensory issues, not the not just like, oh, they don't like loud noises, that kind of thing, but really understanding the things that bothered them, especially with food and textures, that kind of stuff. They said learning my triggers, what triggers me, um, being there to help me when I'm triggered by something, helping me if I have to go in a situation where I know I could be triggered. Now they're out in the world and they're taking college classes and things. And so I don't have as much say or control about the environment where they are now, as opposed to when they were in, public school. Uh, and giving me detailed instructions, being more accurate with how you describe things, how you are teaching me. That was big. So I am very blessed to have a kid that's very insightful, that was able to help me a lot with that, so I could change change the way I parented, change the way I saw the world, change the way um, I spoke and approached things. Um, so yeah, with just a couple of amazing kids who really helped me become a better parent. So that's about all I have. Would anybody like to ask questions, or should I just keep talking? Because I can talk a lot. Um, okay, so, okay. Um, I will say, as of, for finding somebody that, evaluations are really, I found a great person that did the evaluations that spent a lot of time with me, helping me understand things, which I am extremely grateful for because our first evaluations were very clinical. They kind of just went over what was happening and said, here's some things you can do and go get, uh, and you can get accommodations and that kind of thing. So I'm really grateful for the people that I've met. The oh, switch off the sharing. Did I do that? No, stop sharing. Okay, there we go. Uh, just really the people I've met along the way that have helped me and influenced me. The person that did the evaluation just recently was so great and explained so many things and answered my questions. Um, certain doctors who took my concerns seriously, really helped me understand things. Those are the great those are the great things about this path. And again, learning so much about who my kids are and watching them kind of become these adults and go out into the world. Uh, I don't know. I was supposed to be teaching them, but I think they taught me way more than I taught them. So I think that's a big bonus for me because as I mentioned, there was a time when I was not having fun parenting, and um, I am so glad the that this is the path that we went on as opposed to the path that we were originally going down. So I thank all of you for joining, and I hope this was informative. And again, thank you, Autism Connection, for inviting me to this event. I appreciate it.